Hey friends, welcome back to Movies in a Bottle. I'm your host Rhett, and we're continuing our spooky season with a breakdown on Warm Bodies. This is one of the best horror romances ever made, so cozy up to your favorite zombie apocalypse survivor, scavenge your favorite Halloween candy, and let's roll film.
What am I doing with my life? I'm so pale. I should get out more. I should eat better. People would respect me if I stood up straighter. What's wrong with me? I just want to connect. Why can't I connect with these people? These are all thoughts both I and our hero have in common, but while I struggle with these things because I spend too much time making YouTube videos, he struggles because he's a zombie, or a corpse to be more specific, like just about everybody else here in the airport. He wishes he could properly introduce himself to everybody, but like most of The Walking Dead, he doesn't remember his life before the turn, but he's pretty sure his name started with an R. Rhett, perhaps? Probably not, but we can't be sure. This day is like any other. R roams the airport musing to himself about what his fellow zombies did before the apocalypse, but he admits he can't quite remember what caused it. Perhaps it was chemical warfare, an airborne virus, or radioactive monkey outbreak, which I believe are references to Resident Evil, The Walking Dead, and 28 Days Later respectively, but let me know what you think.
Isaac Marion is the author of the series that this movie is based on, and on a Reddit Ask Me Anything, he was asked, what is the best zombie movie? And here's his answer. He said, I don't think there is a single best. They all accomplish different things. My two personal favorites are 28 Days Later and Shaun of the Dead. 28 Days for ditching the camp and bringing a sense of art house class to the genre, and Shaun of the Dead for turning it inside out and having fun with it. Great picks, and I think some of those bleed into the influences for this movie.
As R explores a new part of the airport, he first walks past some bonies, which were once corpses, like R, but now they're too far gone and they'll eat literally anything with a heartbeat. Worth noting, during R's exploration, he also encounters a couple of zombie kids, Tim and Annie, presumably looking for their parents. After a while, R wanders into a cozy little airplane cluttered with charming knickknacks and junk that he calls home. And once there, he unwinds by turning on a record player and listening to Missing You by John Waite. Afterwards, R goes to a bar where he meets up with his best bud M, where they would enjoy a riveting conversation largely consisting of long stares and grunts. But after days of going through these motions, eventually they remember actual words like eat and city, which seems like a pretty straightforward plan to me.
Nicholas Hoult, who plays R, said they had to do this bar scene at least 10 times because Rob Caudry, who plays M, kept making a break character. He said there was all supposed to just be a series of improvised grunts and stuff, but there was always one long one that would make him break. Holt said that he often had to bite his cheek to stay silent.
Meanwhile, humanity seems to be on the ropes as a group of young soldiers get ready for yet another scavenging mission. From the giant televised message by the general and the conversation from the scavengers, we learn that, by and large, the last of humanity has been held up within these walls for the last 8 years, and while the upbeat Julie is optimistic this mission is to gather supplies for a cure, most people, including her boyfriend Perry, have given up hope that it even exists at this point. At least Julie's best friend Nora has a sense of humor and ironically chants, USA, after the general's lackluster pep talk. As luck would have it, R's pack of zombies wandered into the same part of the city as the ill-fated scavengers while they were looting a pharmacy. Of course, the zombies do what they do best, and they ambush and overwhelm the unsuspecting meat snacks, with R leading the charge, which results in him getting knocked down to the side before the bullets start flying. It was during all this chaos and carnage that R saw her, Julie, and time itself seemed to stand still, until that pesky boyfriend Perry shot R and snapped him out of his daydream. But as a wise purple man once said, he should have gone for the head because R is finally able to satisfy his hunger by having Perry for dinner. Nice watch, Perry. Yeah, everybody knows the brains are the best part, but besides that, it's actually a twisted sort of kindness to eat them all because otherwise, you'd come back and suffer the same tormented existence like the rest of the zombies. But for the zombies, eating brains lets them experience all the memories, thoughts, and feelings of their victims, and as R chomps on Perry's brain, he even describes it as feeling human again. R basks in everything that amounted to Perry's life, from summer holidays as a kid to falling in love with Julie in high school, then experiencing all the terrifying and exciting things that come with young love. For the record, R experienced love at first sight. It wasn't just because he ate the brains. Just keep that in mind. The visions of R's new memories bleed into reality as Julie screams for Perry, and then she uses the last of her ammo to save Nora, so she's effectively defenseless. R pockets the rest of Perry's brains for a little late-night snack, and then he shambles over the pretty girl that he learned all about from his new memories. Julie's visibly confused and terrified, but after quickly realizing that she smells alive, R covers her in his zombie muck to ensure that she smells dead too, then he safely escorts her all the way back to his airplane home while wondering what the hell he's even doing.
In a Con TV interview, the leads were asked who signed on first and if it affected the other one's interest in the role. Teresa Palmer said that Nicholas Hoult signed on first, and she admitted that she was a big fan of his. But Hoult didn't let her get off that easy, and he shared a pretty funny story. He said at one point, they were both supposed to be in Mad Max together, but for one reason or another, she was cut. But while she was attached to the project, they sat together for a whole dinner party, but she definitely forgot it because she reintroduced herself to Nick whenever they started filming for Warm Bodies.
Inside R's plane, Julie understandably starts to sob to herself, and R does his absolute best to comfort her by muttering, "Not eat." But it clearly didn't work because she recoils as he moves toward her. R can take a hint, so he gives her some space and wanders all the way through the zombie-infested airport to a nice car where he has a bit more of Perry's brain food. The first of two memories is an uncomfortable dinner with Julie and her father, General Grigio, where they'd all raise a glass to remember the anniversary of Julie's mom's passing before the general would bring up the controversial topic of humanity's wall. Julie clearly feels it's more of a prison than a barricade, but to the general, it's the only thing that's keeping them alive throughout the apocalypse. The second memory is Julie showing how much she craves freedom by showing Perry the only way through the wall that her father doesn't know about. After taking a really obscure path that cuts through a baseball diamond, Perry runs into his dad alongside fellow construction workers. But what should have been a welcome reunion quickly turned into a nightmare as Julie has to save her boyfriend from his zombified father before retreating back behind the wall. R goes home and he realizes he needs a softer approach, so instead of trying to sit close to Julie, he grabs her a blanket and does what he'd normally be doing around this time. He listens to some beautiful music on vinyl. His choice this time is Patience by Guns N' Roses. R takes his seat across the aisle from Julie and chokes out 3 words: "Keep you safe," before drifting off to the music and feeling something ignite deep within. All the while, Julie stares at R with 3 words of her own. "What are you?" Julie wakes up the next morning with R being totally normal and not at all getting caught staring, presumably all night, so she tells her new friend that she's hungry, and then R makes her promise not to leave while he's gone because it's too dangerous. Julie agrees, but immediately after he's out of sight, the coast looks clear, so she bounces. But just as she makes a break for it, a pack of zombies makes their way out of some equipment sitting on the runway, and she tries to hide under R's plane. She has nowhere to run that wouldn't expose her to the increasing number of zombies, and as panic creeps in, something grabs her from behind. But it's just R, and he mucks her up again so they can hide from the others, and then he takes her to get real food this time. When R gives Julie a quick lesson on how to walk like a zombie, there's a walker that looks an awful lot like Rick from The Walking Dead, which I think is a nice little tip of the sheriff's hat, if you will. During an interview with Cinemark, Nicholas Hoult said that he and the other zombies worked with performers from Cirque du Soleil to get the movements right, and he said they were instructed on how to do weird things like smell people through walls. To complement Julie's delicious fruit cocktail, Art gives her the cream of the crop for both teenagers and post-apocalyptic survivors alike, a warm beer. Julie thanks Mr. Zombie for the kind gesture, so he segues right into a proper introduction at last, but he can't quite remember his name, and he trails off after attempting to say something that begins with R. It's obvious to Julie that R is tormented about being so detached from his old self, so instead of painfully guessing at names forever, Julie just decides that she'll call him R. Alarm bells go off for R when Julie says that she needs to leave, so thinking fast, R stretches the truth a little bit, saying that they have to wait a few days for the others to forget. It dawns on Julie how weird it is that she's talking to a corpse and asks if there's others like R, but he only shrugs. Now Julie has to battle something almost as scary as zombies for 3 days, and that's boredom. But R has a solution for that too, and they set out on a sweet joyride in that red car that he likes to ruminate in. They feel the wind in their hair as Julie tears across the runway in the convertible, but she shows R kindness this time by teaching him how to drive. They fly past Tim and Annie before R does a park job that would make Frank Drebin proud. Which basically means instead of parking, they just smashed into another car. Anywho, back in the airplane, the two go about having a great time messing with all the little odds and ends that R's collected, but namely the vinyls, which our zombie prefers over an iPod because, well, they feel more alive. After a couple of days of goofing off, M notices that something is keeping R busy inside the plane, but he shambles off for now. Then Julie asks R a tragically hopeful question after spending so much time with the charming zombie, and that is, will Perry come back too? R shakes his head no, then the two go on to have a heart-to-heart about all the loss that she's experienced. R knows that music can say more than he ever could to comfort her, so he plays Shelter from the Storm by Bob Dylan and lets her dream. R wishes that he could dream too, but the closest thing he has are the brain visions. R disappears into Perry's thoughts once again, and we see the tragic events continue to unfold as the kid has now grown despondent, and he's even given up his aspirations in agriculture for the military life that led to him crossing paths with R on that fateful night. R is unable to watch the brutality of his actions, so he spits out the gray matter and looks back to realize Julie is nowhere to be found. She made another mad dash for freedom, but she didn't get very far until M and some others circled around her to slowly guarantee her demise. She does her best to fight back, but it would be M that goes to take the first bite, until R decks him from the side and knocks the others out of the way too. Now that R realizes his little slice of Eden has come to an end, he mutters to Julie, "Stay together. Safe." M gets back up and first shouts at R in anger to eat. However, after realizing his only friend is showing kindness to a human, he again says to eat, but this time with much more confusion. Eat. Then a Boney shows up and Julie and R have to run. They narrowly get down a hallway and lock the door behind them, but when they go to leave the airport, 3 Bonies are waiting. They move in for their prey, but then Im comes in from the side with a baggage transporter and flattens him. Im reassures Julie that Im is a friend before he escorts them both to the convertible in the parking garage. Before saying goodbye, Im asks R if he's okay, and he only does a signature shrug, but Julie is stopped by a horde of the undead on her way to the car. She shouts for R, and the corpses all stop in their tracks after seeing Julie and him hold hands in the face of death. Then, for reasons they can't yet explain, they all step aside and let the two walk past them so they can finish their escape from the Bonies.
Nicholas Hoult said that when the Warm Bodies script was making the rounds, he really felt like he could do the part of R justice, so he had dinner with director John Levine, and he shared a bunch of notes and had to audition for the part on the spot and act like a zombie in his house. But he nailed the part. Meanwhile, Teresa Palmer, she had to fight tooth and nail for her role by auditioning multiple times, sending an email, and she actually sent in an audition tape for a scene where she was supposed to be singing and dancing with R. But the director had already decided to cast her for the part and decided not to share the supposedly awful video with anybody else.
They drive all through the freezing cold night until Julie eventually has to rest, so they stop in the outskirts of a neighborhood that her dad evacuated, hoping that it might still have supplies. Like any good post-apocalyptic survivors, they immediately start looting the place, and R quickly pockets a knick-knack, but Julie surprises him with a flash of a Polaroid. She quotes Perry, reminding herself that everything she's seeing, she might be seeing for the very last time, which is why memories and photos are so important now. And in the spirit of Perry's compassionate words, she makes R take a Polaroid of her. Afterwards, she turns in for the night, but quickly returns to bashfully invite her friend to sleep on the floor upstairs because these places creep her out. She has no idea that he can't sleep, but R excitedly accepts the invite nonetheless. Checking back with Im at the airport, he sees an advertisement of a couple holding hands, and it reminds him of what he saw between R and Julie, and then he remembers flickering moments of enjoying that simple pleasure with someone in his past life. A smile crosses his face as others begin to gather and stare as well, and then Im asks his fellow zombie if he feels it too, and he gives a nod that he does. Then, like with R and his airplane earlier, something begins to ignite within all of them as well as they stare onward. But for some reason, the Bonies have taken interest in the corpses now. The general and his search party would drive past where R and Julie are hiding, and she makes sure to hide R, commenting how tragic it would be if he was spotted because he'd just be eliminated without a second thought. Once safe, R is less than gentlemanly by taking a peek at Julie while she's getting comfy for bed, but then they have a great conversation. She first asks, does he have to eat people? And yeah, he does, but she can tell by how much he saved her that R is trying to be better, and he makes more of an effort than anyone else she knows. Tears start to roll down Julie's cheek, and she tells R he's a good person. But those overwhelmingly kind words force him to confess his dark secret. Then he gives her back Perry's nice watch. She'd hoped it wasn't him, but deep down she knew all along, and R would sincerely apologize, but Julie was in no mood to respond at this point. Now this is the part where R would typically begin his routine of staring blankly throughout the night, but on this night when he closed his eyes, something familiar and distinctly human would begin to happen. R would dream of Julie talking with Perry and Nora about their futures and how she hopes someday someone will exhume the world. Perry's first critical of Julie's choice of the word exhume instead of revive, and then while addressing him directly, he's critical that R is even dreaming at all. Julie defends R, saying he can dream if he wants to, and then brings him into the conversation by asking what he wants to be. R isn't even sure what he is at this point, but she reassures him that he can be whatever he wants. Then he asks if the two of them can be whatever they want, and Perry butts in saying not a chance after what he told her last night, but Julie only responds by stealing R's move and shrugging, with a coy smile. Jolting awake, R notices that the bed is empty, and he confirms the worst has happened whenever he sees the cars gone. While shambling back through the empty house, he finds the Polaroid of Julie before he makes the long and lonely trek back to the airport where he no doubt feels spurned by love. Whatever hope Julie brought is as dead as he is, and he even feels like an idiot for thinking she might want to stay with him. But even with all those dejected feelings, R can't help but to look over his shoulder, and perhaps Julie regrets her hasty decision too, because she also can't help but to look back before returning home. Outside the wall, Julie passes a zombie test, and then her dad comes out to start scolding her for being lost, but she explains it away with a flimsy story about hiding in a house. After confirming that she hasn't been infected, the general finally hugs his daughter and welcomes her inside. Teresa Palmer explained that the general's lost his wife, so she's really all that he has left, and he shows his love by being distant and overprotective. But she said on set, John Malkovich couldn't have been nicer and more caring like a father. She said that she even cried on scene at one point, in a scene she wasn't supposed to, and he took out his own handkerchief and wiped her eye, which feels like it couldn't have been more juxtaposed in his on-set character. While moping towards home in the rain, R starts to wonder why he's feeling cold, but before he can give that much thought, he's pleasantly surprised to see Im along with the new friends that he's made at the airport. First, Im explains that the Bonies chased them out of the airport, and then he asks his best bud how he's doing, and R opens up he's not doing well because Julie went home and now he's feeling lost. Im empathizes with R for a moment before sharing the bad news that the Bonies are after him, which R isn't particularly fazed by at the moment. But Im adds that they're after Julie too, and that certainly concerns him. Im elaborates that the two of them started something, and just like R did last night, the rest of them are dreaming and remembering things too. It dawns on R that they're changing, and he knows that he has to tell Julie, so he holds up her Polaroid and recruits the others to help him realize her dream of exhuming the world. R escorts them back through the secret passageway inside the wall, and he leaves his crew somewhere before the baseball diamond. By recalling Perry's memories, he's able to navigate through the city and shamble off amongst the citizens. While wandering about, R would think about how he and Julie were giving the others hope and how the Bonies must not like that, and then after a little while he'd find himself outside the General's massive estate. Inside, Julie is having an existential crisis and reminds Nora corpse is just a term for a state of being that they don't fully understand yet. Nora can't really seem to relate, and Julie groans and admits that she actually kinda misses R. Nora teases her friend how weird that sounds, but alas, it's late, so she turns in for the night. Once alone, Julie goes outside to the balcony to think, but R would make himself known by stepping out of the shadows. But instead of relief, Julie is overwhelmed by panic and shouts to explain how much danger he's in. At this point, Nora knows something must be up, so she barges onto the balcony and sees R. She immediately recognizes the zombie and they sneak him inside. Julie greets R at the door and they both immediately apologize and make amends with a heartfelt hug. Once inside, Julie warns that he's lucky there was an emergency situation tonight or else the General would be here right now, but Nora isn't much better with her relentless questioning. Julie asks R yet another great question, and that is, why did he come here? And he says, we're changing and dreaming now. She outright dismisses his plan of explaining all this to her fellow survivors, but realizes R said, we are changing, meaning it's not just him. R shares the unfortunate side effect that the Bonies now want them dead for what they've started, so Julie has a quick change of heart and decides they need to tell her father. Nora reminds her friend how bad of an idea that is because the General loves killing zombies, but she does relent and agrees to help by using her secret stash of makeup for a zombie makeover. You get it, girlfriend. Now that R vaguely passes for a human, he and Julie promise to stick together no matter what, and then Julie and Nora escort the zombie through the city, past a guard, and into the General's base of operations. Julie asks her dad about the current crisis, while Nora and R tail closely behind. The General checks that Julie is armed and ready to hide at the house before he briefs her about the sizable packs of both corpses and Bonies that are approaching. Julie then does her best to tell her dad that she's seen the dead coming back to life, but he thinks that is absolute nonsense, and he adds, the dead don't cure themselves, they eat people, including your mom and your boyfriend. Seeing that things are not going well, R jumps in and tries to vouch for Julie, but in the face of the intimidating General, he can't even muster a single word. Julie frantically explains that R saved her, and she's triggered something within him, and that's also sparked something inside the others. But that was a poor choice of words because the General quips that it's triggered something in him too as he holds R at gunpoint. Julie says the corpses are trying to help, and R even manages to add that the corpses are getting better. Not buying any of what these two are selling, the General goes to squeeze the trigger, but Nora audibly trains her gun on the General's back so her friends can get away. Alarms blare through the city as the two make their escape down into the tunnels where R has left M and the others. But by the time they return, a ton of zombies have also joined their ranks and they want to help fight for the noble cause. R only has time to explain that both soldiers and Bonies are closing in before the skeletal monsters start crashing in from the roof above. M agrees to keep the Bonies out of the city and he orders R and Julie to run before the action starts. Julie leads R through the tunnels where the soldiers make their way onto the scene and relay the situation back to the General. One troop in particular is savagely torn apart by the Bonies, and just before their sole survivor bites it, a corpse of all things comes to his rescue and helps him to his feet. As more soldiers mass inside the tunnels, they are confused to see that corpses are fighting Bonies, and M speaks for the people and lets the troops know that they're on the same side. Since they're in no position to turn down reinforcements, they quickly join forces and fight shoulder to shoulder. Julie and R escape similar such attacks from the Bonies, but eventually they're cornered and nearly overrun. While high up on a balcony, overlooking a shallow pool of water below, R repeats his promise to keep Julie safe, before he holds her tight and they narrowly escape the Bonies' clutches by blindly falling backwards over the edge. To keep Julie safe, R made sure that he impacted first, and in doing so, he bonked his head below the water. Julie frantically pulls him up above the surface, and after a few agonizing moments, R wakes up, feeling absolutely overwhelmed by joy and relief. The two share a passionate kiss. As Julie looks into R's eyes, she sees them fully change from a pale gray to a vibrant blue, but the miraculous moment is interrupted by the heartless general firing into R's shoulder. General Grigio promises the next one goes into the head before ordering his daughter to move aside. Julie makes a heartfelt plea to her father, crying out that she understands how they lost Mom, but they still have each other, and R needs their help because he's different, and because he's bleeding? Everyone knows that the dead can't bleed, so slowly as feelings of amazement and disbelief overtake the soldiers, they lower their weapons. After a few more moments, the general concedes and radios that the situation has changed before he warmly hugs his daughter.
Nicholas Hoult was already quite experienced with long sessions in the makeup chair due to playing Beast, but the process for R started at 2 hours before it was worked down to just 1 hour. Also, something I thought was pretty neat, to apply the neck veins, they said they used something very similar to the lick and stick tattoos that you may have used as a kid. Also, I wanted to point something out about R's eyes. They gradually turn bluer and bluer throughout the movie before they turn to their normal color. And for the rest of the zombies, none of them start blinking until their hearts begin again.
On the ride back, the general is pleased to hear that R is still bleeding, and R thinks about how getting shot hurt, but also how nice it is to feel it all, to feel pain, and to feel love. Sadly, the bonies were too far gone to change back, so the humans and the corpses bonded by wiping out their common enemies together. As for the rest of the zombies, it was thanks to the kindness of the humans around them that they were able to learn to live again. Some learned to play catch, some enjoyed feeling the sun again, and even Tim and Annie were able to find other children to play with. And that is how the world was exhumed. Or Marcus now, gets a nice ending when a kind woman helps him with his umbrella, so in turn, he insists they share it because she's getting drenched. And of course, Julie and R have their own beautiful happily ever after. Julie asks R if he's remembered his name or passed yet, and instead of shrugging, he confidently answers no, but he wants this life. Then the two have an amazing view to see the wall that once separated the two of them come crumbling down.
That is a wrap on Warm Bodies. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed looking at yet another movie in a bottle, and we'll catch you next week for a very special Halloween episode. But until then, y'all be good.
Hey, you made it to the end. Remember, if you want to revisit any more of your favorite movies, check the links on screen, but otherwise, subscribe and I'll catch you for a new breakdown next week. Thanks.